Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Rokai's Raid Guides, where today we are talking about the final boss in T14 and the final boss of Terrace of Endless Springs, Sha of Fear. Now, if you are facing down this crab-like Rangoon, you know that this is a significant jump up in difficulty from many of the other fights we've seen, maybe to only be rivaled by 10-man Amber Shaper, which ultimately might be the hardest fight of the tier for 10-man, but at least for Terrace consideration, this is by far the hardest. We never even managed to kill this on PTR, and actually just a couple of hours ago, before I started recording this, got our very first kill on it. So stick around for the ending. You can see it's super clean. But regardless, this is a long fight, so buckle up, but ultimately not that difficult if you pay attention to the key mechanics and stay calm. With that being said, let's jump into P1. Thankfully, as you start phase 1, if you're standing here on this main platform as a DPS, there's not too much to worry about. Same thing as a healer. There are going to be a couple of different things. These ads you can see on the outer edge of the room that are casting, these can be completely ignored. Each cast is putting one of these small swirly or splash effects on the ground, which are dodgeable and completely avoidable damage, so you can completely ignore these ads for the duration of the fight. Just as DPS, watch your feet, don't get hit by these, your healers will thank you for it. Healers, same thing to you guys, not a whole lot of damage going out in this phase with the exception of the tanks. The tanks are taking quite a bit of damage, specifically on the thrash timers you see there on the middle right side of your screen. So just pay attention to that timer, that's where you're going to be doing the majority of your healing when you're on this centermost platform. And then the final thing that's applicable to everybody on the main platform during this phase is one mechanic called Breath of Fear. Now, if you see here, there's this giant yellow cone of light, if you will. When standing inside this, you are safe from Breath of Fear. However, if you were standing outside of this yellow cone, Breath of Fear hits the remainder of this main platform and will instantly kill you. So very simple, just stand inside of this yellow cone. If you're somebody that needs to be behind the boss as a melee DPS, that is fine to do so. Just pay attention to the Breath of Fear timer and step back into the safe spot when you've got a couple seconds left on that fear. Now, the more difficult part of phase 1 are these platforms. The way platforms work in 10-man is it will pick 5 people to send off to a platform where you're going to be attacking a mini boss and handle a brand new set of mechanics. This is for sure the more difficult part of the first phase. That main platform does not have much going on. However, this side is significantly more difficult. So a couple of the basics. First of all, you're going to have the same set of 5 people in each pull. So for example, I will never get sent back-to-back platforms. It will be the 5 of us here, and then the other 5 people will always alternate being on the main platform or being on one of these small mini platforms with the mini boss. Now, another thing to note, from pull to pull, those groups can and will change. So it's not like it's set in stone. The groups will always be mixed up. So just keep that in mind. However, mid-pull, the groups will stay the same. Jumping back to the start of the platform, I want to say first and foremost, get the Foji raid pack. Without it, you will find these platforms near impossible, as the weak ore you can see in the center left of my screen really simplifies the movement in this phase. So let's start with the movement. You can see here, I actually get hit by this twice, was able to survive it using Ice Block, but the rotation of this specific platform is very simple. Once you are at the entrance, drop a raid marker down like we did. You can see on the right side, slightly hidden behind that lantern, is a blue raid marker. That is the entrance of the room. Then the weak ore will tell you where to stand when each dread spray happens. So dread spray is about to go out. Weak ore says to move left. We move one pie slice left. Stay here until the next dread spray happens, where we will then move right again. Extremely important note, each platform has a different set of movement. So this platform will always be this left right rotation, moving from the centermost or entrance beacon, and then one cone left, one cone right. So this will always remain the same. However, each mini platform, which there are 3 to choose from, have different patterns. Unfortunately, I don't have footage of each individual platform. However, like I said, if you grab the Foji raid pack through his Discord and Patreon sub, the pattern might change, but the weak ore again will tell you where to be positionally. My biggest tip here is as soon as you land on the platform for the first time, put down a raid marker to help position the entire raid, and then just follow the commands you see on screen of move left or move right. On to the second mechanic of this platform. It is called Dread Blossom. This is like a channeled fan of knives is what it's similar to, that you must line of sight. So any of these pillars you see here on the room, you can just step behind when it comes out. It lasts for 5 seconds. Once that channel ends, you can step back out and begin DPSing following that same movement pattern once again. Tanks, you guys can stay out during this, just use a large defensive. Same thing with anybody who has extremely large, like 90% plus or deters from hunters. You guys can stay out during this if needed. Final piece of this mini game, if you will, or small platform are these orbs that you can see that just spawn right next to us. Every few seconds, an orb spawns that lasts for 8 seconds. You need to soak these or it will heal these mini bosses or the crossbowmen that you are fighting. Now, when soaking them, they also do a pretty significant chunk of damage, so you're going to want this job to be done 90% of the time by the tank. So you can see tank is over there playing Pac-Man, running around like a crazy person, soaking up these orbs. Other people with large defensives like AMS or Hunter Deter can help soak these, but the most important part of this platform is making sure none of these heal the boss. So again, they last for 8 seconds per orb and heal for a pretty large amount if consumed by the boss after that 8 seconds is up. So prioritize taking these with large cooldowns from any of your raid members or the tanks just constantly soaking them up. Summary on these mini platforms: use the Foji weak aura. Make sure you position yourself relative to the entrance of the room using a raid marker. Follow the pattern left, right, or whichever it may be for the platform you're on. Dodge the Dread Blossom by LOSing, and soak the Sha infused orbs before they heal the boss. That concludes all of P1. As you can see, the boss here will always phase at 66.3%. So before jumping into P2, let me recap all of P1 and highlight some of the specific things you're going to want to pay attention to. So from the very top, on pull, you're going to want to lust and use every single cooldown that you have. And as a second note to that, anytime your cooldowns come back up during this phase, send them immediately, regardless of where you're at in the fight, as they will reset when you enter phase 2, including Bloodlust or any kind of sated debuff will also reset. So lust on pull, send every single cooldown, and then continue to send them as they come back up. During this main phase or main platform section, the only things to pay attention to: breath, which will kill anybody outside of this safe pie slice. The AoE splashes coming from the ads, but again, the ads will be completely ignored. And then healers and tanks paying attention to thrash, which is the primary thing that will hurt. And a side note for tanks, you guys should probably know this, but the only way during this phase that Sha is aggroable or tankable is by standing in that giant glowing circle in the center. So anybody who's standing in that little beacon there will be the active tank. No other way of tanking the boss works. So just as a little side note. Secondly, the platforms. Each platform has its own unique pattern, but all the rules remain the same. Put a marker down at the entrance. Follow the Foji Pack weak aura for the movement pattern to dodge the Dread Spray. Line of sight the Dread Blossom or that channeled Blade Storm or Fan of Knives looking effect. And have the tanks play Pac-Man for the entire platform phase. Final pro tips: defensive cooldowns you are going to want to save for the platforms. You're very likely to mess up. You can see in the clips so far from me, I got hit by several of the dread sprays. It wasn't our cleanest pull, but it was our first kill pull on this. Save your defensives are not needed at all on this main platform. Anything that you have from health stones, small or large personals, and raid cooldowns, you're going to want to use while on the platform. Healers, likewise, save your healing throughput cooldowns for the platforms. You're likely to make a mistake, as well as any of the 4 other players with you on that platform, and you're going to need the extra healing there. I can't stress this enough. Don't be greedy with the cooldowns. They reset as you step into P2. Final piece of information is progging this is more difficult the very first time compared to previous pulls. Now that might seem like a very dumb statement. Obviously, it's harder the first time you see it. But more specifically with this fight, when you reach phase 2 for the very first time, the Dread Waste, which we'll go into in just a moment, you actually gain a haste buff that progresses or remains throughout all future pulls. It's kind of like a mini checkpoint that makes progression much quicker. So after you see P2 the first time, Everything in P1 becomes much, much easier because you have a haste buff that affects the entire raid for the remainder of your lockout. So just a quick side note, do everything in your power to see P2 for the first time, which will then make P1 significantly easier. All that out of the way, let's jump into P2 right now. So you've made it through phase 1. It is probably the hardest learning curve, those smaller platforms. P2 will seem chaotic at first, and by the time you reach the end of this kill, it's going to look extremely chaotic. But I can assure you, if you stay calm and pay attention to the couple of small details that matter, this phase, with some practice, will actually become quite easy, and you'll make it look much better than we did as we limped our way through a kill in this pull. So let's first start with placement in the room. You can see here that we have 3 world markers down. These are going to be really important because we have 3 people assigned to stand on these beacons and never move. Talk about more of that in just a second. Secondly, boss positioning, you will always want to be at the base of this triangle. So in this case, between green and diamond, you really want the boss to always be standing there to optimize DPS. And again, we'll talk more on that in just a moment as well. For positioning outside of that, you want everybody else, for the most part, to be more or less inside of this triangle, right? So if you look at this as a triangle between the 3 world markers, try to have all other people inside of it. It'll make healing easier. It'll make all the other mechanics easier as well. So the primary mechanic of the second phase is this Champion of the Light. You can see the weak orb that's glowing on the center left of my screen currently. I am holding this orb, a ball, whatever you want to call it. I have the Champion of Light buff. While holding this, 2 things are going to happen. The first, if you are holding the ball, you are going to be rooted in place and cannot move. However, you can perform any other actions. Secondly, while holding the orb, the ads that you can see right here on the map currently will be fixated on you no matter what. They don't have an aggro table. The only thing these ads do is fixate and run towards whoever is holding the ball at that time. Secondly, if these ads reach their target, so whoever the Champion of Light is at that moment, the ball holder, they will then start casting a very, very, very fast cast that, if completed, will instantly one-shot the person holding the orb and almost certainly guarantees a wipe. The way you handle this is simple. The 3 people standing in these fixed positions throw the ball back and forth. An even more detailed version of this is in this POV, you can see me as a mage. I'm standing at the tip of the triangle for how we have this set up. And I will hold the orb when brand new sets of ads spawn. I am attempting to group them up to make them easier to DPS. So I'm going to let all of these ads, which spawn on a very, very far outside of the room, get as close to me as possible. As soon as they get close, I throw it to our healer, our Disc Priest in this case, who's on the green marker. Once they get close to him, he will throw it to our Warlock on the diamond marker. And this is where things change just a little bit. Once we have the ads grouped up and running through the boss, the person on the diamond marker and the green marker will now permanently throw the ball back and forth to one another. What this allows you to do is constantly have the ads inside the same hitbox as the boss, so that you can both get effective boss damage while killing the ads simultaneously. This makes it so that any of the damage checks that may exist using other strategies are pretty much nullified, as it allows your melee to get full uptime on the boss and still kill the ads. The second thing for kiting these ads back and forth is they are slowable. Hunter traps and any other slows that you might have in your comp, and keeping those underneath or kind of permeating around the boss is going to be the most useful thing that you can do to make sure that you don't have to throw the ball back and forth too many times. So effectively, you now know how to play catch with your friends. The explanation may seem chill, but I could assure you in the moment, not being able to move your character and knowing instant death is one misclick away, the shit's stressful. So practice this part, it will likely be the cause of the majority of your wipes. Now let's talk about the downsides to throwing the orb. One thing that happens when you throw the orb or the Champion of Light, the ball, whatever the heck you want to call it, is when there are ads on the map, each time the ball is thrown, they do splash damage to the entire raid. This is to prevent you from just spam throwing it as quickly as possible amongst people. So one thing to consider is you actually want to throw the orb at the last possible second to minimize the amount of raid damage. On top of that, the later into the fight you get, the more ads that spawn. And obviously, alongside that, the more ads that are out, the more damage that happens each time an orb is thrown. So effectively, the faster you can kill the boss, the less raid damage you'll take. At a certain point, it will become too overwhelming when you have 5 or 6 ads running around. When you throw the orb, it will hurt tremendously. With the ball tossing out of the way and the consequences of playing catch with your friends, let's talk about the remaining couple of mechanics. The first of which, and the most difficult and scary, is called Huddle and Fear. Huddle and Fear will affect 3 players in your raid. What happens is these 3 random players will be feared in place, unable to move or take any actions, and take a huge amount of ticking damage over the course of 8 seconds. The way you handle this is the only way they can be broken out of this fear is by receiving the ball, the champion of light, the orb, again, whatever you want to call it. So when the huddle is happening, you need to look at your raid frames, throw the orb to anybody who has Huddle of Fear, prioritizing your healers. You only run 2 healers in this fight. You need to get them out very quickly because Huddle is also the most healing intensive part of the fight. So Huddle of Fear again. It goes on 3 random players. The only way they can be removed from that fear and remove the dot is by receiving the orb. I have a macro that I will link in the description that makes this much, much, much easier. I highly recommend using it. It is a mouse over extra action button interact macro that allows you to just hover over the person on your raid frames, click the macro, and throw them the orb. Without this, I can assure you people will die to Huddle. Again, this is the hardest part of the fight, is handling the huddles. I highly recommend using personals before each one or raid cooldowns for as many sets as possible because the damage is going to hurt not just from the dot, but since you're throwing the orb in 3 quick throws in succession, you're going to take a lot of extra damage from that splash damage that the active ads do as well. I promise you this mechanic is going to cause so much frustration. If you happen to watch our kill live, I think the guild almost ripped itself apart just from people not being able to throw the orb correctly. Because again, it's stressful. You know if the ad reaches you, you're going to die. You know if you don't throw the orb fast enough, the person who has Huddle is going to die. If you don't pick the healer first, if they're picked, everybody's going to die. There's a lot of pressure on throwing the orb. So the best advice that I could give is just understand there's going to be tons of wipes to this mechanic. Don't give the people a hard time. Practice it, stay calm during it, and when mistakes happen, learn how you can get better from it. And please, for the love of God, use the macro I'm linking in the description below. It will make your life 100 million times easier. With a second note on that, the other thing is that the people who are assigned to throw the ball back and forth can use a separate macro that targets their partner that they're supposed to be throwing back and forth with and never have to think about it. I'll link that in the description below as well. For people assigned to throw the ball back and forth through the boss, this will help you a ton. With the most difficult mechanic out of the way for P2, let's talk about the more basic stuff and how to handle it. First, the timer you see on the right side of the screen there, Submerge. It's very simple. The boss goes underground, becomes untargetable, and then a few seconds later will have a graphic on the floor, kind of looks like fog or bubbles. The boss will pop up from underground and will kill anybody who is standing in that ground effect. So simply put, move out of the ground effect. Once the boss comes back up, have your main tank taunt him back to the base of the circle or the triangle. I don't know shapes. I'm not very smart, but I'm not going to re-record this. You're going to have to deal with it. So boss pops back up, taunts him back to the base of the triangle, and that's it. I'll be honest. If you get hit by this, you're as dumb as me calling a triangle a circle. All right, I'm going to keep it real. Speaking of dumb, the other mechanic that's easily dodged and you should never get hit by is a tank frontal. You saw it just a moment ago. It's a giant cone with like a bubble type effect that the boss will do every so often. Again, if you get hit by this, I don't know what to tell you. You're going to have a real hard time with the rest of the mechanics in this fight. So dodge the frontal, dodge the submerge/emerge from Sha. Those are the easiest ones. Now on to not as hard as the huddle, but the scariest remaining mechanic. It is called Water Sprout, and it's basically a ground effect that is somewhat difficult to see that can spawn under one player that just does a ton of damage. All you have to do is move out of this. You can see in the weak aura there's only two options for the boss in this case. It's either going to be a frontal that the tank has to dodge, or the sprouts, which will target a random player, leaving a ground effect that they have to move out of. You can see later on in this pull, I end up getting one underneath me, and it does a huge amount of damage, so just move out of this very quickly, but it is avoidable damage. On to the last part, and maybe to some people the most important. For me, the least important. It's tank mechanics. So it's literally called Naked and Afraid, which is going to be a debuff that goes onto the tank every so often. This is also a taunt swap mechanic. Naked and Afraid, I won't go into the full details of the tooltip, but you could assume you're scared for your life. If you have Naked and Afraid, you cannot tank the boss under any circumstance. He will basically one-shot you. So one tank is going to take the Naked and Afraid. Once they get that, the other tank taunts off of them. It's simple. Don't be too scared, but you will be pantsless in a dread waste filled room with a giant crab rangoon attacking you. Okay, so maybe be a little bit scared. Finally, for the tanks, the last thing is Thrash. This is a mechanic going out all of the time. As much as possible, you either want a personal defensive cooldown or an external cooldown for as many of the Thrashes as humanly possible. Just due to the nature of 10-man, you're not going to be able to have a cooldown for every single one. So just tanks, manage your personals really well as your externals. Healers, you absolutely have to save your externals for the tanks on the upcoming Thrashes, and anybody else in your raid who might have a way to reduce damage, whether that's Hand of Sack from Ret Pallies or anything else that a DPS player might be able to provide, Vigis from Warriors, save those for the Thrashes, listen to your tanks, use them on that mechanic. It can one-shot people potentially, but it's on a fixed timer. You know when it's happening. Just pay attention to it and be prepared to have a cooldown for each one. One final alter time, back to the beginning of P2. Let's cover it all again in a condensed format from top to bottom and add some strategy alongside it. So again, most important part, have your 3 beacon or orb throwers in position on the markers you see on the screen here. Use the person at the tip of the triangle to group the adds as closely as possible when they originally spawn. Then, once all the adds are very close to that tip of the triangle, throw it to either player at the base of the triangle, and until the adds are dead, have it thrown back and forth between the 2 people at the base, while tanking the boss in between those 2 pillars, so that you can cleave all of the adds and have them all relatively close in proximity. Second, tanks having externals or cooldowns for the Thrashes, dodging frontals, dodging the submerge and emerge when the boss pops back up, watching for ground effects on the sprout. Finally, and the most difficult piece, the Huddle of Terror. Make sure you have a raid cooldown for every single one of these. If you don't have a raid cooldown, using a personal on every single player in the raid. And one last reminder, use the macro in the description below. It will save you a lot of progression time. And again, don't get mad at your friends. Someone's going to mess it up. It's okay. So let's talk strategy for Bloodlust. You have 2 options here. You can Bloodlust at the very beginning of the phase, which you will do right after his first emerge that he does. You don't want to lust as soon as you get down there just because you won't have enough damage uptime. You're going to do it once he comes back from his first submerge and emerge. You can lust there, which you won't have any adds for almost the entire duration of your Bloodlust, so it allows more single target damage. That is the strategy that we used. We found easier. The alternative to that is moving lust towards the very end of the phase when you have more adds out and the adds become more overwhelming. But it's a bit of a catch-22. You lust early, more boss damage means you don't see as many adds spawn because you'll kill the boss likely a little bit faster. Whereas the inverse is you're going to be in the phase a little bit longer. You're going to see more adds, but it'll be easier to kill them because you'll have bloodlust. So pick whichever you feel is better for your group. There's no right or wrong answer here. We just liked it at the beginning. The single target damage we found was really useful. Secondly, how do the adds actually work? They spawn in certain groupings, and it's consistent throughout the entire phase. The very first set of adds you see will just be one singular add, fixated again on whoever is carrying the orb. After that, it'll be 2 sets of 2, 2 sets of 3, 2 sets of 4, and then 2 sets of 5, scaling infinitely. If you're in this phase long enough, you'll eventually see 2 sets of 6 adds, 2 sets of 7 adds. But I can assure you, if you really see beyond 5 adds, odds are the damage is going to be way too much. So If you're going to be on pace to kill this, you really don't want to go past that 5 ad mark. So again, a set of 1 and then 2 sets of 2, 2 sets of 3, 2 sets of 4, 2 sets of 5. And it'll continue ramping up until you either wipe or the boss dies. Outside of that, there's not a whole lot else of strategy. For the people who are not throwing the orb, you are funneling as much boss damage as possible, maintaining slows on the ads, and just kind of throwing them into the blender underneath the boss. Tanks are taunt swapping on the Naked and Afraid, and healers, you just pray that if one other player gets Huddle and Terror and you are one of those targets, that you get that orb first. But if you can manage the ball throwing mechanic effectively, the fight becomes very, very simplified. Outside of making sure that gets tossed around, there's not too much else happening. The raid damage is relatively controllable and low when you're earlier in the phase. What I will say for throughput cooldown sealers, when you get to the point of 4 or 5 ads being out, again, when you throw that ball back and forth, they trigger splash damage on the whole raid. That is where you're going to want to have your throughput cooldowns, whether that's Ascendance, Wings for a Paladin, etc. Throughput cooldowns, save for the later stages of the fight. The early stages of the fight, outside of huddles, are very, very low damage. So if you've made it this far into the guide, we are a whopping 26 minutes in on a 12-minute boss fight that could go as long as 15 minutes potentially. It is a long one. Buckle up. It's chaotic at first, but the comfier everybody gets, the better you are at playing baseball and playing catch with your friends or like your dad when you were growing up, the fight becomes simpler and simpler. Now, normally I would end the guide right here because that covers all the mechanics for P1, the mini platforms, the main platform, and all of P2. However, if you were in the stream and watching this kill live, you know that the next couple of minutes of this fight get absolutely insane. So I figured if you want to stick around, I'll leave a little treat, including the voice comms of our first kill on Sha of Fear. It's a funny one. You could say it wasn't even close, but stick around, find out for yourself. Thanks a ton for all the support I've seen on these guides. It's been incredible. The messages, the comments. Thank you so much. It's been really fun helping you guys out. I hope you've enjoyed them. I know they're overall pretty low effort, not a ton of editing going into it, but it's something I love doing. I pushed this out immediately after killing the boss on Raid. Spent the last couple hours piecing it together just because the support's been awesome, and I promised I'd get you guys this guide as quick as possible. So here it is. Feedback, as always, welcomed in the comments. Drop them down below. Hit the like, the subscribe, all the things to show love to the Hemet boys and everybody else who made this run possible. And we'll see you guys in Throne of Thunder.
Yeah.
Spouts into huddle.
Are we killing these ads set?
3, 2, 1.
Oh,
What's
I'm
the
dead.
root?
I'm dead.
To me.
Yeah, I did.
Pick it up.
Res me.
It's on the ground. It's on the ground. Pick it up, someone.
I don't know
Risk
where it
root,
is.
quick. Sauce on him.
I got it. I threw it to Palmer. It's on Palmer. It's on Palmer.
Just throw it to me.
I'm getting him.
We're just killing boss, right?
Yeah. Kill the boss.
Yeah,
Yeah,
go boss.
kill boss.
And there's
Lost and just toss back and forth.
submerge in 3. Get slows on these ads.
You don't have chill
Yeah,
blinds
it's-
from
it's
me on
early.
this one. You're just blast him.
I have to throw to you.
Special soon.
Blast them, boys.
Personal.
boss.
Huddle.
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 Get to Throbbing. I got Throbbing.
Vivid.
I don't have it. What are you?
Frontal.
Tanks
Just
are
kill
up.
boss.
Tanks are up. Pick it up.
Someone needs to pick it up.
We don't need to pick it up. We can just cut the ads.
Naked. Spouts.
He has to touch it. That's a
Yeah,
boss.
he's got all the ads, just fucking sprint.
Just kite!
Yes!
Holy shit.
Let's go!
What a kill!
Holy
What a
fuck,
kill!
man.
Oh my god. And the trinket.
Oh my god.
You guys gotta practice that mechanic, man. That shit was crazy.